Nearly everyone at the Santa Fe legislature seems to agree that early childhood education and development is a good idea, but when it comes to questions of how to pay for it and how quickly to expand it, that's when the fault lines emerge, even within the same party. NMIF correspondent Gwyneth Dolan spoke with economist Vicente Feliciano and two Democratic senators, Senator Michael Sanchez and Senator Pro Tem Mary Kay Papen, who are on opposite sides of a push to use more money from the state's land grant permanent fund in order to dramatically expand early childhood programs.
One of the groups that's supporting the plan to tap the permanent fund to pay for early childhood education hired you to do an analysis of the economics of taking this money out of the permanent fund. You believe that this is the fiscally conservative thing to do. Why do you say that?
Because New Mexico faces a crisis in childhood well-being. At the same time, it has the resources to deal with the crisis. And when you're talking about risk aversion, conservative, you need to spread your investments. And as of now, there's too much investment in financial assets and not enough investment in human capital assets. And so what we're talking about is a need to rebalance the investments of New Mexico.
So why will spending more money on early childhood education save us money in the long run?
Well, on the one hand, the people will be better educated. There's a huge difference in the income of an individual who graduates from high school than one that doesn't, and the person who graduates from high school will pay taxes in the future. The key here is balance. You can increase the fund and increase it by more than inflation, which is our recommended policy. But to channel resources to diverse your investment, to invest in human capital, and those individuals, better health, better educated, is what ultimately would help the economy of New Mexico. What we are going to leave other generations is a better educated population and a healthy land grant permanent fund. Okay, other benefits is lower costs for incarceration, lower costs for health care. A kid that is in neonatal intensive care unit costs something like $45,000. Other expenditures could be the remedial cost of education when the kid doesn't come with the right tools to join school. So the benefits of early childhood education far outweigh the return on investment on early childhood education, far outweighs returns on financial assets as presented by Nobel laureate Professor Heckman.
Other analysts and lawmakers say that, in fact, we don't have enough money to do this. Why are your numbers different? Why is your conclusion different?
The basic difference in the estimates of these proposals is that the other analysts consider that the contributions from the state trust land into the fund are going to stagnate at $500 million, in spite of the fact that the historic record is for increasing contributions, that the proven oil reserves in New Mexico are at an all-time high, and that the land grant permanent fund is investing in assets such as oil because they consider it a good investment that will grow at healthy rates, 5 to 6%.
Research has shown that when you make an investment in early childhood education, those dollars are best spent if they're focused on the kids who are most at risk. This plan doesn't do that. It applies the funds across the board. Why do you think that's the right way to do it?
At this point, the details of what programs are going to be pursued is still to be discussed. It must be stressed that the kids who are presently not benefiting from early childhood education programs are precisely the at-risk and the poor kids.
Again this year, we are seeing proposals to tap the permanent fund to pay for early childhood education in addition to K through 12, which we're already using permanent fund money for. Do you approve of that idea?
No, I do not.
Why not?
Because I feel that the permanent fund, the word is permanent for starters, but I believe that those dollars are there and that we reinvest those dollars and that then we get monies back in from those dollars back in to be able to use in our budgets. So I'm not for going into the permanent fund to do that. You know, we're looking at all kinds of things. I know transportation said they were 12 billion with a B dollars that they need for roads, and that's our means of transportation in this state. So I think, you know, if we're going to get into the permanent fund for one thing, when we have huge needs out there as well, but we're not doing that. I just think we need to, we've been increasing the dollars that are going into the early childhood. If we take money from the permanent fund and put it into early childhood, the private providers won't get any of that money. So, you know,
But
and
state contractors will.
yeah, state contractors, well, that's absolutely right. But I'm not a supporter of doing it that way. I think we need to be putting money out there in pre-K and the early childhood, and I think we need to be doing that and being very judicious in the way that and hopefully careful in the way that we invest our money to get the highest return that we can get back.
We spoke this morning with an analyst who wrote a report for one of the supporters of this proposal that said, in fact, this was a fiscally conservative decision, that spending this money now on early childhood education would save us money later.
You know, I don't know whether I haven't seen his report, so for me to comment on his report is probably not appropriate. But I think we need to have more parent involvement in education. I think parents should be expecting more of their children in school and making sure that they are in school and attending classes, they are doing their homework. I think we need I know the early college high schools, the students sign a contract and the parents do as well, and they're not having dropouts, and the young people are attending school and are being in those classes. And I would like to see some way that we really got our parents, and many of them are, I'm not criticizing parents who do that, but I think it's imperative to not just say, well, the schools need to educate my children. I don't think that's the only place that children get their education.
Your colleague, Senator Sanchez, is the one who is sponsoring this joint resolution in the Senate, and there are a couple other conservative Democrats, Senator Smith, who don't like this idea, but many liberal Democrats do. Is this a problem within the Democratic Party?
I don't think it necessarily is. I think there's many of us, you know, we all come from different parts of the state. And so if you're talking about Senator Smith, he and I are both from the southern part of the state. We're more conservative in the southern part of the state. So it shouldn't be a problem. If it is a problem, it should not be a problem that we're not diverse in our party, and we should be diverse.
Some analysts say we have the money for this, and some say we don't. Do we have the money?
Oh, we absolutely have the money. We have $12.1 billion in the land grant permanent fund, and all we're asking for is 150 or 160 million of that to use toward early childhood education. So the money's there. Philosophically, those who oppose it and those who are in favor of it have a philosophical difference in terms of how that money or why that money should be used at this point in time. But throughout the history, it's been used for educational purposes. And New Mexico is in a dire situation, one of the most dire situations that we've ever been in. If you have healthy kids that are graduating from high school, they're less likely to go to prison, and they're more likely to produce good incomes and raise good, strong families in the state of New Mexico. So back to your question, do we have enough money? Absolutely, we have enough money.
We spoke to your colleague, Senator Papin, earlier today, and she does not support this plan. The chairman of the Legislative Finance Committee, Senator Smith, also a Democrat, does not support this idea. Why can you Democrats not get on the same page about this?
Well, again, there's a philosophical difference. They have their belief that the permanent fund should never be touched. I believe differently, that we are in a very serious situation in the state of New Mexico, and that we need to start tapping into this fund now before it's too late, before we lose many more children to poverty, to prisons, to being in our healthcare system without insurance. I believe that the time is now. It's of the utmost importance. You know, even though we're from the same political party, remember, we have a big tent, and people within the Democratic Party have different points of view. And it's just one of those different points of view that we haven't been able to reconcile at this point in time. But, you know, I'm the eternal optimist. I'm praying and hoping that they'll come around to believe like I believe, and that how necessary it is to use it at this particular point in our history.
I understand this morning in committee there was some discussion of changing the percentages, changing the amount of money that would be taken out of the fund for this.
To 1% instead of 1.5%, which would mean $100 million. Of course, and I'm amenable so that we can get it to the next committee and then get it to the Finance Committee for a vote, and hopefully be able to convince them on the Finance Committee that this is the right approach. And they also put a sunset provision of 10 years, and we're hoping to ask the sponsor of that amendment to make it 12 or 15 years.
Now, some people are concerned that if we take 1.5% of the interest we earn on the permanent fund, that there's less money in there to earn more interest on going forward. Are you worried about that?
I understand what you mean, but it's only a certain percentage anyway of what the other entities get. And we're not touching the corpus. We're touching the interest, getting to the interest. But the way this fund has grown over the years, and the highest I believe was at 14 or 15%, and now with a new bill that's coming in where we can invest globally, and they're predicting that if we're allowed our investment council to invest globally, that the rewards are going to be even higher. It may go to 20 or 21 or 30%. It also could fall. I mean, you know how the economy is. The economy might fall, and we have provisions within the bill that if it gets below $10 billion, it automatically ends. So we're preserving $10 billion is a lot of money. $12 billion is a whole bunch of money. If I could take $1 billion out of there, we could jumpstart our economy, not only in regards to early childhood education, but economic development as well, if we really had the intestinal fortitude to do that and remove funds from this account.